please now join me in welcoming to the stage Allyn Shaw and Jean Marie Navetta.
How are you?
I'm good, Allyn. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Erin, for that amazing intro for us. It's nice of her, right?
It was.
Yeah,
and now we just have to live up to it.
Well, we will.
We will.
Okay.
We will. So, Allyn, the first time that I met you, I had just started it out in Equal. I was at the summit, and I ran into you outside of the BIPOC CEG meeting, and I said hello. And I thought, oh, he's very nice. And we went in, and the way Allyn opened up that CEG was, welcome to the family cookout. And I thought, this is different. And I was really happy about it. And then about 45 minutes later into it, everything got very emotional. People were feeling a lot of stuff in the room, and I was literally sobbing. And you sat down next to me, and I thought, oh, this is the end of me. I'm crying here at my first day.
No.
And you said, it's all good.
Yeah.
And I thought,
Yeah.
this is really different.
Yeah.
And then one more thing, and I actually do need to refer to my notes from this. So when I emailed you and said we were going to have this conversation, I need to actually quote Allyn's email, which I have here. I am not a fan of inauthentic corporate mumbo jumbo. And I thought, oh, this is going to be really different and good. So I want to get to work in this conversation. So, you know, everybody, Erin was just talking about, we're all talking about it, have been talking about sort of where we are right now.
Yeah.
It's a scary place. It's an adversarial place. How are you feeling taking leadership in an organization, going into where we are at this very moment?
Well, first, you're amazing, by the way. And I appreciate how you showed up that day for our meeting. It was emotional. And the reason why I did get permission from Teresita and from Chris. I said, I think we need to reframe this because people were kind of stressed. You can see people didn't know one another. They're like, well, what do we talk about? What do we say? And we needed a space that everyone can like relate to. People love food. People typically like their families. And so I was like, you know what, let's call it the cookout. Like, let's really engage. And like, this is about being around family and friends and chit-chatting. And you helped bring that forward. So thank you for everything you did to make that a success. For me, you know, it's interesting. We talk about intersectionality. I know we're going to talk about that a little more. Look, I'm a Nigerian American. My father is an immigrant from Nigeria. My mother's from Ghana. And we grew up in Compton, California. I'm straight out of Compton. And, you know, based on the zip code I was born, I shouldn't be here today. I certainly shouldn't be a banker or a technologist or a member of a board. Like, that just wasn't in the cards for me. And so it's an honor, it's a privilege, it's my life. I owe my life to what I'm doing today with all of you in this room in this very moment. And so when I think about the state of the world today, and I think about, you know, the people who don't have rights, the individuals that continue to get persecuted, I think about companies that are doing their best. They're doing their best. I think about organizations that don't know where to release that tension. You know, there is no easy answer. So that's why we have to convene. That's why we have to come into this room and share ideas. That's why we have to stay vigilant. Relentless optimism progresses the world forward. I have to remind myself of that. We are going to get tired. We need to tap out, take a breather, jump back in. But it's not a simple answer, but I do think that together we can make a difference. We can stay vigilant. We can stay focused on what matters, which is you, us, our families. I think if we do that, we'll be okay.
I really like that. And I like the idea that it's going to take vigilance, but we also need to know when to step back sometimes,
That's right.
too. So you mentioned one of my favorite things to talk about, which is intersectionality. And, you know, sometimes I get really frustrated because I find people say intersectionality, and to them it just means, oh, I'm two or more things, and here they are. And it doesn't get to the real intention of that term, which is analyzing systems of power and who has access to it and who doesn't. so you actually tipped off a little bit of your personal story.
Sure.
And you really do hold a multitude of identities which have granted you sometimes access to things and many times created barriers.
Sure.
Could you talk about sort of your own background and how your intersectional analysis of that and those identities that you hold has sort of gotten to you to where you are? Because you're not the typical corporate story. And I was excited to talk about this with you when we did a little bit of a prep call. And I think it's an important story to hear because I don't think we often get to parts of your story that I think are so critical.
I appreciate that. I don't like talking about myself, so I'm gonna.
But I want to talk about you.
I know you do, Jean Marie. Jeez, Louise. Yes. Okay. So a couple of quick things. Yeah, my family grew up in the church, like not unlike many families here. I say my poor mother, but I actually think she's quite blessed. She had a hard time with me coming out. She still today has a very difficult time with it, and you know, she was blessed with 3 very close family members of her, myself, I consider myself queer gay, my sister, who a little later in life came out as a lesbian, and then my nephew, his pronouns are he, they, non-binary, and I think that was God's way of helping her through her. He's like, you're going to get this message, you're going to understand the importance of this. And I'm going to help you along your journey.
Put people around you
Put
until
people
you're there.
around you. And so when you think about intersectionality, no one thinks about the family aspect of intersectionality, but think about this West African family growing up in Compton, California, in the church, and this woman who is sanctified, right, with her hat, with these 3 queer children. So you've got that angle. And then you had the scenario where I was in ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps. I love my country. I wanted to serve for my country. I wanted to be the next Colin Powell, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's what I wanted to do. Became battalion commander in my Army ROTC. Did everything I was supposed to do. Whoop, whoop. And of course, you know, you have don't ask, don't tell, right? Stops me dead in my tracks. And the recruiter told me, you can still join the Army. You can still get that second lieutenant commission. You can still go to college. West Point was my target. But you just need to not disclose your sexual orientation. You need to lie about who you are in order to participate in life. And I thought to myself, you just taught me about integrity and honor and valor, and now you're telling me to lie? I can't do that. I can't do that. Like, fundamentally, I am just not built that way. And for those of you, both the Bank of America team, the Wells Fargo team, they know me. Like, I'm the guy that says the things that everyone's thinking, but I just say it. And I'm provocative, and so that, I couldn't do that. So that's one other piece of like the intersectionality that came to bear. And then this whole thing around education and social economic, right? I do not have a college degree. I did not go to college. I couldn't go to college. I couldn't leave my family. I couldn't do that. I needed to go to work. And I was just speaking with Tiana from USA, and we talked about these children and their parents who, you know, they didn't save for college. My parents did not do that. They did great, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm here today, my sister's here today. They did a fantastic job. But it just wasn't in the cards for us, right? And so how can I dare go to college, put in, you know, create debt, and then, like, I can't do that. And so the idea is you gotta go get a job, right? You gotta help bring groceries in. You have to help with the car payment, right? And so I didn't go to college, and that's okay. That's all right. And then this a last, like, you know, point of view here is around like athletics. Like, when people saw me when I was younger, they didn't think, hey, he's queer. They never said that. I never had that issue when I was younger. It was, he's black. It was, let's lock the car doors, let's hold the purses. You can't date my white daughter. Like, that's the hate, and that's the energy that I received from people. But he can run. I did the 50, 100, 200, 400. I was a great athlete, right? But so when you think about, you know, queerness and intersectionality and religion, like, all that is a part of who you are. It's not just he's gay and a male, right? There's so many layers there, and I think often we forget about that.
I think we do. And actually, you brought up something I always wish we got more time to talk about. I feel like we talk about all the different aspects of diversity inside of the queer community. I don't think we talk a lot about socioeconomics.
No.
And I think particularly in rooms like this, if you're in this room, you're pretty privileged to be here. Like you're
Absolutely.
in a position where you have something that has allowed you to come to something like this. Do you think that's a conversation that we need to dive into more? Because I feel like when I heard that you were willing to talk about that with me, I thought, I have to do this because it never happens. Is it an area that we still need to do some work in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We see it in the trans community, Black
Yes.
trans women in particular. We see it, there's Allyn as an organization in New York City that specializes in youth, LGBTQ youth. There are LGBTQ youth that don't have homes. And the majority of that youth are people of color, Hispanic, Latino, Black, African American to be specific. Like, so yeah, we get so, and mind you, this is not me being critical by any stretch of the imagination. I think we all have our own personal journey. We have, you know, what about me? What about mine? But there's so many out there that are part of our community that don't have a voice, right? They don't have someone advocating for them. They don't have someone like you, all of you in this room, making sure that they're put forward and their needs are met. And so the social economic piece is huge. I spent some time, I speak for the United States State Department, the US State Department often. And recently, about a year and a half ago, I went to Trinidad and Tobago, and specifically my mission there, I spent a week there. My mission there was to help Venezuelan migrants, specifically the LGBT migrants, get equal protection under Trinidad and Tobago law. The Trinbagonians, again, I believe people do the best they can, right? But the Trinbagonians were not seeing these Venezuelan individuals, especially their children, as equal. And so these children couldn't go to school. They couldn't get housing. These are people, fleeing persecution, and a government was treating them less than because they didn't have the money, they didn't have the social economic means. And of course, you add on, their gender, if they're women, you add on the fact they may be, LGBTQ. Like, these are things that matter, and there are people suffering in the world. So yes, it's something we need to be talking about. It's something that I think we all can help with, and it's a focal point that we need to start to pivot on.
Yeah, and I think there's, especially as we hear more of these stories, it becomes absolutely necessary. So you talked about your background, your family, where you came from, some of your experiences. At an event like this, when we say, what is your most salient identity, I think a lot of people would just assume, well, the one that's most salient to me on a daily basis is my sexual orientation, my gender identity. That's not the case for everybody. And I think some of the research that we released last year is showing that we continue to see this. When you think about the identities that you hold, that are most salient to you, knowing we are at an LGBTQ event, what actually is the most salient identity? And which is the one that you find yourself actually talking about the most?
Oh, it's me. I'm Black. I mean, that's the first thing that people see. That's the first thing that people react to. That's the first conversation, whether it be in the workplace or again in sports or. I remember this one scenario where years ago, not Bank of America, not Wells Fargo, where I wasn't getting invited to these events, right? And thank you, Aaron mentioned, I'm a tennis player. I play a lot, 3-4 times a week. I compete, and back then I played a lot of tennis. And I remember there was a corporate league that had been set up, and I couldn't get these invites to the social hours. I couldn't get, the invite to the strategy meeting, but someone happened to see me play tennis at one of the events, or at the club, right? And went back and mentioned it to, some of my colleagues, and all of a sudden they wanted me on the tennis team, right? So it's always the athleticism, it's always the color of my skin. It wasn't necessarily that I was LGBTQ. Of course, when I told them I'm gay, the eyebrows went up. Some people stopped talking to me. Others leaned in to want to know more. We don't act gay. We don't talk gay. You guys know what I'm talking about. And so this is, when we think about identity, right, we think about what's salient and what do people see, it's not always what might be invisible. Teresita Richard talks a lot about the invisible parts of our being, and I don't think we talk about that enough.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think sometimes when people hear those stories, because it's different than their own experience, that you have these light bulb moments and these moments of maybe my advocacy belongs at a different place at a different time. And I think that that's so important. So I love the artist Andy Warhol. And he's had this great quote. They always say that time changes things, but actually you have to change them for yourself. So a lot of the time that's true. Individuals do need to go to work. We can point to all these examples of the game changers who got us where we were. But it always puts the responsibility for change on those who are marginalized, which brings us, I think, to our conversation about our allies. Looking at what we are looking at now, what we are up against, and these issues become more complicated because we're not just dealing with LGBTQ+, we're dealing with all of the issues that intersect with this. What are the kind of things that you think our allies need to be doing right now? I mean, it's definitely more than just showing up at Pride. It's definitely more than a sticker. What should we be asking of our allies? What are the conversations in that space that need to happen?
You just said something, and I'm going to go off script, but
I love off script.
okay, work with me on this.
Okay, I'm with you.
Because I might need your help. So you just said something I think is super important. You talked about LGBTQ+, right? And there's more than just our community, and I think we need to pull that thread, right? Within our LGBTQ community, you have women, you have people with disabilities, you have veterans, you have parents, like you have neurodivergent. Like I think sometimes we forget that we are a microcosm of so many diverse communities that are all marginalized. Like we don't own the marginalization of what's happening. Like that's not, like we have an opportunity to, I think, open our arms and our hearts and welcome in other people that are hurting and suffering and need to maybe learn from our successes as a community. So I think that's something that we don't own the word allyship. It's situational. Sometimes we need to be allies to women, to veterans, to neurodivergent individuals. And I think sometimes when we're so focused on the LGBTQ community, for all the right reasons, by the way, I think sometimes we forget that we can actually help others as well. So that's one piece.
Yes.
I think the other piece is when we think about like allyship. I made this controversial statement not too long ago, and I got some hate mail, but I'm good with that because that liberates my thinking. I think hate mail I'm like, okay, I didn't think about it that way. That will inform my next go around, right? But I made this comment about, well, two things. Number one, at Afrotech, I mentioned that, you can keep your seat. I want the whole damn table. Right? That got some attention. And then I made another comment about, and I mean it, I do mean that, right? And the second comment I made was about, like, we keep having this conversations that we're saying, that we're telling allies to give up their seat. I don't think that's right. Like, when in the history of the world did anyone who had power give it up? When did that ever happen? That never happened. And so I don't know if allyship is about asking people, especially our straight white men who we all love. We love them too, by the way. I don't know if it's about asking them to give up their power and to give up their seat. It might be, as a first step, add another seat to the table.
Yeah.
Right? Be more inclusive. I'm not asking you to give up anything because you have a family. I get it, right? We could talk about that in a couple of years, right? But maybe just add a seat to the table. So when I think about allyship, I immediately go to advocacy. I want it to be active, not passive. You mentioned the stickers. I'm over the stickers, by the way. I don't want to see another sticker. I'm over the stickers. Like when there are moments that matter, we need allies to stand with us. We need allies to stop the conversation and remind people of why we're here and what good looks like and how we need to support our communities and our customers and our friends and our families. That's what we need allies to do. We need allies to listen, right? But then we need to listen to allies. They may give us hints to how we might be able to better further our cause. They may tell us, hey, I know this matters a lot to you. Actually, RBG, there's a quote. She says, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that leads others to join you. I think I got that right. Sometimes we need to listen to allies. They may have a hint for us on how we might approach a problem and drive to the outcomes that we need. That's what we need from allies.
And I think it's sometimes hard to hear that because we have our own agenda. I need X, Y, and Z done. I need these things achieved. And allies are somewhere else on it. And I think it takes this humility on both sides of the conversation. I also wonder if maybe the role of allies actually needs to be, if they're sitting at the table, to say to people, why isn't that person included?
Right.
Because they have that power at this moment to bring attention to the fact that there aren't enough chairs there.
That's right.
And I wonder if that's maybe where it is. So one of the places, and Aaron was talking about our community engagement groups, our CEGs, and you were involved very early in the BIPOC one.
Yes.
And this is something that we are really excited about. Over a dozen of these groups are forming, and they are just informing so much of the work that's actually happened. Where do you want to see these groups go? Where do you want, I mean, it's more, and we were chatting in the elevator yesterday and talking about how sort of these have shown up and the evolution of groups like this. They need to be more than just once or twice a year, people who hang out and say, oh, this is the problem. What do you think the power of these communities can be?
You know, it's an interesting conversation to have. I think a couple of things, and this, again, this is just my point of view, right? What do I know? And that's why all of you are here, right? You're going to bring collective energy and thoughts and ideas and share them, and then together we're better. But a couple of things. Number one, I think it has to be a continuous dialogue. It's not one and done. It's meeting what's going on in the communities. What are we learning from one another? I think it's understanding the cultural differences. There are cultural differences between Native Americans and Black African Americans and Nigerian Americans and Asian Americans and individuals that might be from Puerto Rico versus Colombia. Like, there are cultural differences there that we just throw everyone into BIPOC. Like, that's not cool. That's not cool. I think we need to see people for who they are. We need to see people for their cultural differences, their families, their communities. Now, that means that you have to take the time to do that. That means you can't rush. That means you have to listen. But I think if you take the time and hear and listen, you learn. You see people. People are seen. And I think it helps that dialogue. And and then the third thing I would just say is, there's opportunities to do, between Summit, at Summit, here. Again, it's that continuous conversation. And it's not waiting to be held accountable. Like, if I have to come tell you to call your partner, your friend, and ask a question, like, that's accountability. I want you to have ownership. Like, take the ownership to want to learn, to want to understand. I saw something in the news. I want to reach out. Is it okay for me to ask you?
Yes.
Or I heard this in a meeting and it didn't sit well with me, but I don't know why. Can I tap your knowledge and understand it a little deeper? Like, I think, like, seeing each other and engaging in that type of dialogue, I think that's what builds strength and fortitude and connectedness. So that's what I want to see the CEGs go.
So in those spaces, I think we have opportunities sometimes to find those mentors, those sponsors, people maybe who are a little bit further along in their path than maybe we are on some of these things. Did you have somebody like that along the way? Somebody who was like you, or did you need to figure it out? Could you tell us about it?
I did. I mean, look, I would not be here today if it weren't for hundreds of people who have helped me. Some of them fired me, which helped me too, to be honest with you. I've been fired a few times, but a couple of people. So first, for kind of a data point, like I've been doing this for 30 years. It's cocoa butter. 30 years I've been doing this. It's cocoa butter, I'm telling you. And when my mom used to put it on my face when I was younger, I'm like, get it off of me. And now I thank her, but I thank her dearly for it. But when I was young, I've been doing this for 30 years, and in 30 years of me being in fintech, I've only had 3 people of color, this is including Hispanic, Latino, 3 people of color that have been my boss. 30 years. Aaron talked about being the first. And at first I used to hate being the first. I'm like, I'm so tired of being the first. But now I'm like, okay, I'm all right being the first because now I can lift as I climb. Right? Now I'm going to keep that door open. Now I'm going to hire and I'm going to pull people through. So now I see it as an obligation, as a responsibility, right? But I think, when I think about the fact I only have 3 leaders of color in my 30 years, and those 3 leaders of color were in the first 5 years, and those 3 individuals, it was 2 women and 1 man, one, she cracked me up. She used to tell me, you can't play with the big dogs, Allyn, and piss like a puppy. I'm like, what is she talking about? Now I know what she means. But I'm like, what? And then she would give me a shot of tequila, drink this, and I was like 22 at the time. I'm like, what is this woman? But now I get it. And then the second leader, she was also another black woman, by the way. She was great, and she explained to me that the way that the world saw me is different from the way I was taught. See, I was taught by traditional African parents, right, which is different from the cultural differences that you have as an African American. Totally different, right? Going through slavery and being part of that lineage is different when your parents and your family come directly from Africa. It's a totally different experience. And so I would come off as, well, I can do what you do. I'm just as smart as you. And that didn't work in America, right? And so she sat me down and said, okay, buddy, like you need to understand, you need to have situational awareness, right, and react and respond.
Yes.
And then the third person, Madison Kilpatrick, is amazing. This is the company I actually got fired. I got fired because of my mouth. And I
find this shocking.
I was right, but it didn't matter. Because just because you're right doesn't make it right, you know. But and what he did is for a year he took me out of my position. He stopped me from. I got fired. He got me rehired like the same day. He said, "You're now reporting to me." He took my entire team away from me. I was early. This is like my late 20s, and he goes, "I'm going to help you understand what it means to be a black man in America." Whew. I get a little emotional. Because if he hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here today. And I appreciate him for seeing me for who I was. And he was traditional, right? A man of the cloth. He didn't like that, what he quote, queer stuff. But he looked at me and said, I need to help you because there's something about you that's special. And if I don't help you now, you may not be here later. And so, like, I needed those three people in my life at that time so that I can be here with all of you today. So yeah, I think mentorship and, thank you. Sorry.
No, perfect.
Sorry. So, darn it, don't cry. Okay, so I think mentorship and sponsorship is important.
You told me it's okay to cry.
I did.
You did.
I did. So mentorship and sponsorship is incredibly important. The only cautionary tale is that we need to be very careful not to over-mentor and over-mentor, we'll talk about sponsorship in a second, women and people of color in particular. I think too often
Yes.
we tell people, in order for you to get that promotion, you gotta go to this diverse leader training. Or in order for you to, be, a candidate for a particular role, you've got to check these boxes. Meanwhile, we see the doors, wide open for all these other people, but yet there's something you're still not good enough. You're still not there. I think we need to be very careful with that. Sponsorship is another thing. We need to sponsor more. Everyone in this room needs to be sponsoring someone. You have the power, the authority, the influence, the access, more so than you probably think, to help someone get to that next stage in their career. So that's my thoughts on mentorship and sponsorship.
I love those.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so important for somebody who's been there to talk about it, but to give that flexibility too, because I think that it's in those moments of flexibility, I'm gonna get you to this point, but now it's time for you to build it, that we have those opportunities to redefine what these expectations are.
We do.
And that now those people walking in the door look more like us.
That's right.
And less like the people we were watching.
That's right, and we need to be honest with them. Like, sometimes I think we sugarcoat. Don't sugarcoat. They're tougher than you think. They need to know the real deal. Life is not fair. Stop telling people life is fair. It's not. It's just a 4-letter word. Get over it. It's not fair. They need to be situationally aware. This is the situation you're walking into, and this is what's required to get to the next step. And you never want to betray your values, your principles. Never do that. But you may have to play the game a little bit.
Yes. Play it long enough to change it.
That's right. Of course.
That's
yes.
it.
Be the insider. Change from
Yes,
within.
yes.
That's right.
Like, get yourself in there and then change everything that wasn't right for you. It's the only way that we do it. No one's going to do it for us.
No.
And that's why we have to get in there. And that's why we need to support more people on the way in the door. Because the more of us that are doing that,
That's right.
it's not going to get easier, but it's going to be bigger.
That's right. And pay it forward.
Yes.
Right? When you get that help, then you pay it back. You pay it forward. You help someone else. And that's the momentum, right? And that's how you accelerate, and that's how you drive change.
And nothing feels better than that.
I agree.
Literally nothing feels better than that.
I agree.
All right, so I have one more question for
Okay.
you. And this one is kind of a limited one, although I wouldn't mind if it went a little bit over.
Okay.
I want 3 words from you to describe how you want everyone in this room going home to lead in their organizations.
3 words.
3 words.
All right. Agency. Stop waiting for people to tell you to do something. Do it yourself.
Amen.
I'm over the empowerment word too. Sorry. like.
You promised no corporate mumbo jumbo.
I did. Like, why are you waiting for someone to empower you? Like, empower yourself. You are empowered. You're here. You're here for a reason. Your company sent you here for 2-3 days for a reason. You are the leader. There is no Calvary. You are the Calvary. Mm-hmm. There is no Calvary. You are the Calvary. Okay? So that's one. Take agency. Second, you have to have urgency. You have to have a sense of urgency. It's coupled with self-care, right? Have the urgency, act with purpose, execute brilliantly, and when you get tired, you need to tap out. It's okay to say you're a little tired. It's okay to say I need a break. Tap in your friend. Let them take the ball a little forward. And then when you're ready to jump back in, we're ready for you to jump back in with us, right? But you need to have that self-care. So urgency, yes, but don't forget about taking care of yourself, right? Because if you're not well, then what it's for nothing, right? I would say the last, and I said it earlier, and it's not one word. I'm sorry, Jean Marie. I don't follow directions very well.
It's probably where we're going to get along.
It's probably so. But again, relentless optimism progresses the world forward. It's easy to get lost in the despair. So easy. And that's human nature. Don't ignore it. That's not healthy either. Seek help, seek care, do what you need to do, but remain optimistic. We're not going to win every single battle. We're just trying to win the war. But we're not going to win every single battle, and don't let that deter you.
I love that. Yeah. It's perfect. It's perfect. And I think I always think about the self-care thing, Audre Lorde talking about how it's an act. It's a revolutionary act. Yeah. That we have the audacity to actually say, I need some help and I'm going to step back for a second.
That's right. How dare you?
Yeah. Yeah. We're not supposed to be allowed to do that, and we are giving ourselves permission, and I think that is bold. And it's necessary.
It is necessary. I have a question for you. We have a little bit of time.
We didn't plan on this.
We did not plan on this.
Oh, boy.
That's right.
It's not in my notes.
It's not in your notes.
Okay.
Give me your notes.
I'm giving you my notes.
All right, there we go. So you've been an educator.
Yes.
For an incredibly long time.
Yes.
You come from a family of educators.
Yes.
Tell this team, tell this room why you love what you do so much.
Oh, there is no better gift and honor in the whole world than to be able to share something that you've learned with people and see that light come on and see people realize I can do this, and see people just get excited about the power that they have, their brains and their hearts, and knowing what's in them. I can't think of anything better in the entire universe to do. I was teaching this morning, and I was so happy I almost exploded, and it felt so good. And I want everybody to know that every time you choose to teach someone something, whether it's in a room full of people or in a classroom or one-on-one, I can say, I think I'm allowed to, can I say it's God's work?
Yeah, sure.
It's God's work to me. That is why I was put here. I was given the ability to do it. You have the ability to do it however you see God or don't. Yeah. That's so important. It's a gift and it's a privilege. And there are people who want to do a great job here in our own community and our allies who want to do a great job. What an honor to be able to help them figure it out.
Yeah.
And how strong and smarter I get from getting to work with them. So, oh my goodness, you knew how to make me get very excited. I'm almost embarrassed now, but.
No, that's great. Her love for this work and all of you is infectious, and I just wanted to share that with the team.
Thank you, Allyn.
You can have your notes
I
back.
have my notes back?
Yes.
Okay, my emotional support notes. This was so much fun, and I did not expect that last part to happen. You saw the panic when I got unscripted, but Allyn, thank you so much.
Thank you,
I am
thank
so
you.
excited to see what you were going to do, and I'm really excited that I get to work with you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.